This video is about Battle of Sluys, the first battle in 100 Years' War, without which it wouldn't be even 100 Years' War. Stay tuned. The Battle of Sluys was a naval battle fought on June 24, 1340, between England and France. The naval Battle of Sluys was the first significant battle of a 100 Years' War and was as important for English as the defeat of Spanish Invincible Armada in 1558 and the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. If Edward III lost this battle, then the 20,000 French army, which the Philip VI was planning to invade England, would not meet any resistance at sea, and on land they would meet only a little resistance. But there is no doubt that Edward deciding to fight the French fleet risked very much and could lose everything at once. More of the background you can find in my third video dedicated to the history of a 100 Years' War. Click here. The English fleet sailed from the mouth of Orwell at dawn of June 24, 1340. The next day at 9 a.m. the English approached the Flemish coast and saw the enemy fleet in the distance. Edward ordered one of the clergy to go ashore and then go 10 miles in Bruges.
Fucking Bruges.
Thank you, that's a good question. To persuade the Flemish allies to attack the French fleet from the shore, while the English would attack the enemy from the sea. In addition, 3 knights landed on the shore to scout the quantitative composition and the exact deployment of the French fleet. Knowing that Edward was going to go to the Netherlands, the French should have blocked the English ports and met the English fleet at the sea and destroy it. But the French did not neither. French ships stood at the estuary stretching to the islet of Canzan, 3 miles from the coast. Admirals Nicolas Begouchet and Hugh Quiret, having connected the ships with chains, built them in 3 defensive lines, with a front to the sea. Begouchet, a small blurry Norman, was previously managed to conduct several successful sea raids on the English coast. Quiret was also an experienced sailor, but the admirals did not get along with each other. Despite their experience, they made fatal mistakes. They should have fought the English on the high seas. At that time, the French sailors were more skilled than the English, and their skills would have provided them with an advantage despite the lack of galleys. Instead, the French admirals decided to fight the English off the coast, almost on land, and on land English knew how to fight. Another commander of the French fleet was a mercenary from Genoa, who participated in many naval battles, Barbavara, also known as Egidio Boccanegra. He held another opinion. He stated that the defensive construction of ships chosen by the French interferes with the necessary maneuverability, and it is better to give English battle on the high seas, taking advantage of the number of ships. Despite the fact that from time to time the English made sea raids on the French coast, the French had significant advantage at sea, and if a great army of the sea, as Philip VI proudly called his fleet, entered the English Channel a year earlier, the composition of the French would be still more powerful. At that time the French had more ships, including much more galleys, more maneuverable and better adapted to battles at sea than the clumsy English cogs. Fortunately for English, the unrest in the Genoese Republic didn't allow the local authorities to provide their galleys with the crews to the French king, and the English themselves burned several French galleys pulled ashore during the sea raid in Boulogne. So the French fleet located in Sluys had only 6 galleys, 4 of its own and 2 of Genoese. In addition, the French fleet had 22 oar barges, not as maneuverable as galleys but still more manageable, 7 military sailing ships and 157 requisitioned merchant ships. The French under Sluys has a 19,000 army, including ship crews, but however only 500 archers and 150 men-at-arms who were professional warriors. The rest did not have combat experience. The English did not have a purpose-built navy. Edward owned only 3 warships. The rest were requisitioned merchant cogs, counting at 120 or 150 ships. It carried 1,300 men-at-arms and 1,000 longbowmen. So, on the morning of June 24th, Edward received the necessary information as well as a report of the clergyman sent to the Flemish. The inhabitants of Bruges believed that if English attack on a French fleet, which significantly outnumbered the English in numbers, they will certainly lose the battle. They advised the English king to wait a few days, promising to send several of their ships as a reinforcement. The king did not heed to the advice of the Flemish, but decided to wait to attack the enemy until the sun shines in his eyes. He took his fleet into the sea to form the battle order. Maneuvering took almost a whole day. The French probably thought that the English decided to retire and began to unchain the ships in order to pursue the enemy. In any way, many French ships were still held together by chains when Edward, waiting for the tide and fair wind, went for attack. Edward built his ships in one line, front to the enemy, with each ship with soldiers on board located between the ships with archers. Archers were located on special platforms erected on the bow and stern, from where, drawing close to the French ships, they fired in the volleys, sending hail of arrows into the French and sweeping them off decks. The French archers also did not stay idle, but they were less skilled and even shot at will. The largest French ships were in front of the line of defense, and the English boarded them, which was not easy, for the French ships were higher than the English. Once on deck of enemy ships, the English, using swords, maces and spades, acted skillfully, using the experience gained in the Scottish campaigns. The English captured the ship after the ship in front of a line of the enemy defensive line and recaptured Christopher. In the second defensive line, which consisted of smaller ships with less trained soldiers on board, panic began to spread, and by the end of the day the English captured most of these ships. Ships in the third line tried to sail away. During the battle, the French, unable to withstand the onslaught of the English, jumped overboard, but those who managed to get to the shore were met by Flemish, who arrived in time for the battlefield. Those who didn't know how to swim, and such was the majority, drowned, as did those who did know how to swim but were in heavy armor. With the onset of the darkness, some French ship and the Genoese galleys managed to get out of the battle and hide in the night. In the Battle of Sluys, the English won a landslide victory. They captured and sank 190 enemy ships. The chronicles contemporaries of Edward attributed the stunning victory to the mercy of God, but the reasons of the victory were different. The French, despite of the advantage in the art of navigation and the quantitative composition of the fleet, did not use the opportunity to give the English battle on the high seas and put their ships on the estuary, and even depriving them of maneuverability. And in close combat reminiscent of a battle on land, the English were clearly stronger due to the rate of archers and combat training of soldiers who gained rich experience in land battles. According to some resources, the French lost 20 to 30,000 killed in the Battle of Sluys, but these figures seem extremely overpriced. Of course, in a land battle, in case of an unaffordable state of event threatening a road, you can escape from a battlefield and save your life. But in a battle at sea, under the same circumstances, there is nowhere to run unless you jump into the sea, and yet most likely that the French in the Battle of Sluys lost no more than half of their troops, about 10,000 killed, wounded or captured. Admiral Quirier fell in battle, and Boucher was captured. The one who captured him might hope to get a ransom for the French admiral, but the king reasoned differently. English did not forget the sea raids of French on the English coast, accompanied by killing and robbery, and Edward ordered the unfortunate Bégauchet to hang on the mast of his own ship. The losses of English turned out to be relatively small, so 400 to 600 people like killed or wounded. The English king did not escape wounds, but Edward received minor injuries in the thigh and arm. After the Battle of Sluys, the French still had the opportunity to make the sea raids on the English coast, but a large-scale invasion of England was no longer possible. So, thank you very much for watching. That's it for today. Like the video, subscribe if you don't want to miss more. Thank you very much. Bye bye.